Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show. I am Patrick Daugherty. It's Thursday, May 2nd, joined by Denny Carter, Kyle Dvorchak, and someone who works here again. Pat Kerrane has accepted a job offer with NBC and works here again.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. Yeah. The betrayal has been reversed. Thanks for coming back, Pat, as a full-time employee of NBC.
Pat did the old, he choosed some papers. I can just sign this for me, and didn't realize I was signing a contract to come back to NBC. But that's right.
Pat is a legendary website. He's the proprietor over there. Amazing site. He's unfortunately not back with NBC, but he is fortunately still doing amazing work. A lot of that was related to Dynasty rankings and, of course, best ball rankings. And that's going to be the theme of our show today. We've already done a lot of draft talk, but there's still a lot more to go. Really, we're kind of trying to nail down just where we are on a lot of these guys. And that's going to be one of the big themes for today. And someone I didn't put on the show sheets, we've already talked about him a lot. But we're setting aside 25 minutes to talk about Brock Bowers, Pat. He's your tight end 11, and I believe your best ball ranks, not your dynasty rank. I actually forgot to see where you had him in your dynasty ranks, but it appears you agree with us that the landing spot essentially could not have been worse for what could have been a very, very special tight end prospect in terms of fantasy production.
Yeah, I mean, the landing spot's definitely really, really bad for this year. I think, going to an offense that we're not that excited about, one that will be pretty run heavy. I think the signing or the drafting of Bowers indicates we're probably looking at a lot of 12 personnel. Like maybe it's sort of the Dalton Kincaid plan, but Gardner Minshew instead of Josh Allen. That doesn't sound as exciting. So, yeah, I think I'm still, compared to Dalton Kincaid, drafting him, I'm willing to draft him basically where we were taking Kincaid last year because I think Bowers is such a strong prospect. And I think he will immediately have a big role in the offense behind Davante Adams. But, yeah, it's just not as exciting as, like, he goes to the Rams, he goes to the Bengals. He would be used in really, like, creative ways that would help unlock their offense, I think. Like, they would be, showing this formation that they can run and pass out of, and that would be really dynamic. The Raiders under Luke Getsy, I think it's going to be a little less dynamic.
Man, I keep thinking it's Luke Getsy. Yeah,
I'm trying to, by the way, I'm trying to paint a picture for myself where Bowers could be somewhat fun for fantasy. And no, wait. And I think I do have a picture. How likely this is, I don't really know. But hear me out.
I thought you weren't going to list the picture for a minute.
No.
The total fantasy in your head. And
I'm going to bring you into my head. It's frightening, but so the Raiders last year under Antonio Pierce, when they were down by even 1 point, had a 62% pass rate. Okay, so they really tended to air it out when they were trailing. Now I'm guessing that the Raiders are going to be trailing a lot this year because they're probably going to stink. Okay, now what? I know they're not going to stink.
What about the dog levels, the vibes?
Okay, all right.
The interim head
okay, so this is based on the Raiders being bad. Okay. So if they're bad, they're going to have to throw. They might be able to throw a lot. Minshew loves those intermediate type throws. He did that a lot last year with Pittman and to an extent Josh Downs. There's nobody besides Davante Adams.
That's not true. That's actually not true. I hate to say it.
Who else?
Mr. Jack Myers, Mr. Michael Mayer.
Michael Mayer's not going to be.
Michael Mayer's not a thing.
There's a pretty decent amount of target competition. To me, when Pat mentions the Kincaid role as like a good possible outcome, I agree, except for it's the Kincaid role without Josh Allen, and it's the Kincaid role with a lot more target competition, I feel like. And an offense that's just going to be more run heavy, I feel like.
So the Myers thing, actually, that might be the thing that sinks this whole scenario. But I do think if they use him in as basically a big slot receiver like Kincaid, he can be a little cheat Cody.
Yeah, and I mean his yards after catch ability is so strong, and he got used on a lot of design stuff, and so I think he gets some of that. Gardner Minshew likes to throw short, so I think that'll be fine. Yeah, so Bowers is actually a pretty decent fit for some of the stuff. It's just like it's hard to get that excited about the number 2 offense, or number 2 option, maybe number 3 option in a Gardner Minshew offense. So
he might literally be the number 2 tight end. I don't know if we're allowing enough for this possibility that he might be the number 2 tight end.
I mean, I liked Michael Mayer as a prospect, but he took a while to pass Austin Hooper and then wasn't super productive after that. Bowers is going to adjust him, I think. And
It's a totally regime too.
Different regime. Like I'm not concerned about Michael Mayer. In fact, I kind of like that Mayer's there because one of the, I mentioned this on our Dynasty pod I did with Davis Maddock and Jacob Sanderson earlier, but like the worst case scenario for Bowers was that, he goes to some like Mike Vrabel comes back, drafts him, hands him, a meal plan that has this dude putting on 35 pounds. Like that's the worst case scenario. He's like, you got to block first. We got to get you to block defensive ends. That's the very first thing, Brock. Then we can think about you catching the ball. That's the worst case scenario. It's not so bad if he's functionally a slot receiver out of 12 personnel, literally just the copy and paste Dalton Kincaid role. And that's kind of who he is. So, it's Mayer being there allows him to take over some of that pure inline stuff. And I think Bowers can block well enough that he should be out there, especially if they're running a lot of 12 around the goal line. Like he'll be out there for play action stuff, I think. So, and what I would say with Bowers is like, I hate that he landed here because it's so much less fun than it could have been for this year. But I do think he becomes a really big target in Dynasty, especially in tight end premium leagues. I believe I still have him tight end 2 in Dynasty. I mean, he's just an excellent prospect. Davante Adams has a $44 million cap hit on a team that he has no interest in being on next year. They can save $30 million by moving on from Davante Adams, and Adams will remind them of that as soon as the season ends. So he's gone. Davante Adams is gone next year. Jacoby Myers versus year 2 Brock Bowers is not going to feel especially threatening. So I think we're on track. Now, the Raiders have got to get the quarterback situation figured out, but we're on track for Brock Bowers to be entering 2025 as the projected number 1 target earner in his offense. If he flashes the type of ability that I think he will, we're going to be really excited again, especially if they get a quarterback. So long term, I actually don't view this as like a disaster. It's again not ideal. You want him on like the Rams or the Bengals or something, but it's pretty nice given the discount that's going to come along with it in Dynasty.
When you started talking, I was going to make a joke like, yeah, you really got your cope down pat there, Pat. But by the end, it all makes a lot of sense, actually. And yeah, I've probably been target competition in general can really get overstated with a first-round prospect. And when the way you laid it out, none of it is actually that imposing. There's a lot of target competition, but it really is not high quality target competition. And Jacoby Myers and Michael Mayer are both like basically the prototype of like, these were guys the last regime wanted. Like the new regime, like they have no allegiance whatsoever to Jacoby Myers or to Michael Mayer. And yeah, I'm coming around a little bit more on the landing spot after you said all that, just to be honest.
It comes with a discount, which I think is important. Like if he wasn't going later in drafts, but in Superflex rookie drafts, he's generally like going behind Rome Odunze now. You're going to take Jaden Daniels ahead of him. Drake May kind of bounces all around. I would take Drake May ahead of him though. So you're looking at him at like 107, maybe even 108 if McCarthy goes ahead of him. Like that's pretty amazing for a tight end prospect this good in a tight end premium format.
You said if the Raiders, they need to get their quarterback situation figured out. It certainly seems like they wanted Michael Penix. Where do we think that Brock Bowers would have gone if the Raiders had actually gotten Michael Penix, by the way? Do you think it would have been like the Bengals? Maybe
there was reports the Rams wanted to trade up for him. He would have been a perfect fit for them.
He would have been. Imagine this is Sean McVay. He gets everyone in the front office into a conference room, and he just writes on a whiteboard, "What if Tyler Higbee, but good?"
A slow clap ensues. Everyone, yes.
What if Tyler Higbee, but good?
This is Davis Maddox's point, but the Falcons ruined the draft. The Falcons just straight up ruined the draft.
100% ruined the draft.
They went 2 off the board. It's not fun anymore. It literally just made us all like think about like what football even is. Like what's the point of any of this?
No, it plunged us into existential dread. And,
it did.
In a very bad place because you're like, okay, so these teams have actually no plan. There's no there are teams out there that have zero ability to put together a long-term plan, and the Falcons clearly are one of them.
These
Well,
teams
I
are
did-
spending hundreds of millions of dollars. People's entire lives, hundreds of them, revolve around what we thought was creating a plan long term for the organization. I've got like $100 in my bank account. How am I supposed to create a plan for myself?
Well, it's gonna say I actually almost say like they're so incapable of formulating a short-term plan. It's almost like they got Kirk Cousins. They were excited at first. Then after like 2 weeks, like, oh my God, we got Kirk Cousins. Like, man, screw this. It's friggin' Kirk. Like, what we're gonna do? We might win a wild card game. Oh wow. Oh
Right.
hell yeah.
They looked at their roster with Kirk Cousins on it, like, I guess it's time for a rebuild before even seeing him.
I know exactly. It's like, hey, what are we gonna do? Hang a banner for the wild card round? And of course, we're the Falcons. We will do that.
We absolutely will do that. Maybe they saw Kirk Cousins' leg recently, and they were like, "Oh no, oh God."
The only explanation I've heard, and I think this was Connor Rogers who pointed this out on his pod with Trevor Sikkema, where he was saying that like I'm pretty sure this Connor saying like you'd be surprised how late the coaching staffs tend to get involved.
That was
in
a
this
really
process.
good point. I heard.
Yeah,
Connor
I thought that was
make
interesting too. Yep.
And that is the only thing that's made sense to me is that Raheem Morris basically started watching Michael Penix tape like the instant Kirk Cousins
April
signed
1st.
that contract. Yeah. Like, he was like, all right, we got our quarterback. Time to go watch these prospects. Oh my God.
My theory is they got so spooked by their short-term plan that they just decided doing long-term planning. And like that's like all they can do right now is long-term planning. And they realized they didn't even like their short-term plan. But I think the real thing is they just have no clue what they're doing. And
yeah, I think they fell in love. They fell in love with Michael Penix, and you couldn't talk him out of it. You couldn't even get him to trade down a couple spots to see, like, hey, the Bears, you know who probably is not drafted a quarterback? The Bears. The Bears have probably not drafted a quarterback. Maybe trade down a spot.
Can I just present a scenario for Penix this summer that actually might kind of work out? So Cousins, they're going to say, oh, he'll be fine. Week one, obviously, Achilles is no big deal. But what if it is not a small deal? What if it is actually a big deal? And then so Penix is the QB1 for spring practices, for mini camp, for training camp. What if he does well? And what if
then it's
worst case scenario?
It's actually worst
Absolute
case scenario.
disaster.
Yeah, because then it's just you want to talk about existential dread,
right?
Between the fans and the players and the
horrible,
coaching staff.
Horrible for the organization. It is literally the worst case scenario for him to be good. But for fantasy, I think it really does.
Draft a guy 8th overall when the worst case scenario is he's good.
Oh, it'd be horrible. They have to pray that he's terrible. They have to.
They actually do.
I do think that's maybe a good point though about drafting him in like dynasty context, where like if you're taking him, say your dynasty draft is in a week, and like obviously when you take him, you're not going to be starting him this year, but like maybe there is a small chance for a value bump immediately, where like they get into OTAs, they get into training camp, he looks really good, he plays some great preseason games, and it doesn't take a year for the hype to build. It doesn't take 18 months for the hype to build. You already start getting hype on your like clear long-term investment as like a dynasty manager by preseason week 2 or whatever. Like I'm also just trying to spin the positives from more like a fantasy outlook.
You can get Michael Penix pretty cheap, like middle of the second round in rookie drafts, Superflex rookie drafts. You can get Michael
Superflex.
Penix.
Yeah, I mean non-Superflex. You probably get him in the 3rd round. To be totally honest.
Oh, I mean non-Superflex. I don't think you should be drafting Michael Penix at all.
I put him in the.
You should be on the waiver wire.
I haven't released my full rankings yet. I have running back, receiver, quarterback up. I have him like a late 4th round pick, I think, or mid 4th round pick. Like
he'll go earlier than that because it becomes the classic like around 3.5, 3.6. You're like, whatever. I might as well take the guy who was the number 8 overall pick.
Exactly. Yeah.
I have a hard time.
I think he'll go earlier.
Enjoy cutting Michael Penix in week 6 when you do that. You're going to hold it back to quarterback for 3 years. You're not going to do it.
That's another thing too, though. So the guy's 24, as we know. Like in a realistic scenario, he's not starting until he's 26. But that's really hard to believe. Like they've honestly just like set up a ticking time bomb. Like the guy's going to.
What's going to happen
in the next 2 years?
I think what's going to happen is, I mean, God, if they miss the playoffs, I mean, we're getting Michael Penix at the end of the season. It's happening, and it's possible. Like it's certainly more possible than before they when they could have drafted Rome Odunze. That definitely hurts their chances just throwing that pick away for this year. So, I mean, that's the tough thing, because then if he plays and plays well, then you go into 2025 with like a legit quarterback controversy. I think that's
There's gonna be.
reasonably
That's the thing. Unless Kirk like plays at like at least a Pro Bowl level. I was gonna say All Pro, Pro Bowl. It doesn't matter. Unless Kirk has almost like a career type year. Like every time he throws a pick, like oh wow, Kirk Cousins red zone interception. Who saw that coming? Kirk Cousins third down sack. Never seen that one before.
Nope.
Well, at least Kirk Cousins is famously good on prime time when everyone will be watching.
So don't worry, they're not giving the Falcons any primetime games.
Oh yeah, they'll get a few with Cousins.
I loved Terry Fontenot, the GM, later on saying, "You don't want to reach." He said that with a straight face.
I know.
So, I think it was like about like a safety or something.
I mean, we're talking
Like,
Fontenot now has 2 anchors around his neck. One of them is the catastrophic selection of Kyle Pitts, and the other is the catastrophic selection of Michael Penix.
All right, well, we'll table that for another day because I'm ready to go to war for that one. But
we will table that. We'll move on instead of having our 4,000th.
I mean, he took him over Chase, right? He took Pitts over Chase.
I know every once in a while they did. I tweeted this
That's
out recently because I was like, that can't be right. No. Pro Football Reference has that messed up. They literally did do that.
I think I've told Denny this before. It was the kind of take, this may shock people, but even though like we're in the public takes business, you don't share every take that you
don't.
And draft weekend, I guess in 2021, my friend and I, who's a major Miami Hurricanes fan, so he's a huge Florida hater. We were both like, oh yeah, Kyle Pitts is like the ultimate like pick. Like this guy's getting everyone in this front office fired. Like
not yet.
Not yet, I know, but not yet. Got to give him credit there. And so I did not have courage to unleash that one in public. And
it was correct.
Was it? I was gonna say, was it actually though? Because they haven't gotten fired.
Yeah, I mean,
coaching staff things than ever.
Coaching staff has gone though, and part of it seemed to be their lack of.
That's true.
Team. Yep,
that is true. That was, man. I think the answer to this is no. But do we miss me yet with Arthur Smith and the Falcons?
No,
no,
not even a little.
No, we don't.
Not one tiny bit.
We do not miss me yet.
Although I look forward, if they start 0-3, there will be a billboard in downtown Atlanta with Arthur Smith's face on it that says "Miss me yet."
And the Steelers did nothing wrong.
The Steelers are going to be 3-0 too. They'll have averaged 11 points in those 3 games, but yeah, they'll have a bunch of wins, and it'll look like they miss him.
Kirk Cousins, I tweeted this recently. No one has ever been more motivated and hyped to have a 26 touchdown, 7 interception season. It's just going to be the sickest 26 touchdowns.
You're such a hater. Oh my God.
All 7 interceptions in the fourth quarter that changed the game, of course. Because he never throws a pick when when it doesn't matter in the first or second quarter. Third or fourth quarter, that's when this goes to work. He'll lose a fumble, maybe gets tomahawked. The ball comes out.
Hey man, as long as he just keeps playing point guard for Drake London and the other guys, I'm good with it.
Pat, earlier, did I hear a baby monitor in the background? I forgot to mention baby Vivian. I always want to send our public congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
To the burgeoning Kerrane family. I thought I heard a baby monitor. Am I imagining that?
Yeah, Pat threatened. He said, "Listen, one of us is having a kid. One of us is having another kid." So get to it.
And it can't be me. It can't be me. Yeah, we're getting to work on Kyle next. Kyle said he's looking forward.
No. We're not getting to work on Kyle next. We're not doing none such. What happened?
Kyle said he wants to fill an entire, like one of those like Ford vans, that they use to make deliveries. That's what Kyle wants.
That's called projection.
Van,
That's projection.
What we want to do is move on to the 2 biggest names in Dynasty rookie drafts and best ball rookie drafts: Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Nabers. Pat, who are you prioritizing in Dynasty? I know in best ball you've got Marvin Harrison fairly far ahead of Malik Nabers, just relatively speaking. I think it was like 10 picks. But who are you prioritizing in Dynasty? A lot of years Malik Nabers would have been like it's kind of becomes a tired cliche, like, oh, he would have been the number 1 receiver in most classes. But I do think he probably would have been the number 1 receiver in at least 60 to 70% of classes.
Yeah, me too.
Who are you prioritizing in Dynasty, MHJ or Malik Nabers?
Yeah, so Jacob Sanderson pointed out today, and he's like in 1,000 rookie drafts. He was like
really smart guy too.
Yeah, he's really dialed in, really sharp. He was making the point that if you don't take Harrison when you have the chance to take him, you just won't have any. You're not getting up from 103 for Harrison or Williams, because some people are taking Harrison 101. And so Caleb and Harrison are just sort of locked into those top 2 spots. kind of that the draft begins at 3 sort of situation with Nabers. That's maybe a little silly. I would be, if you had some Harrison and you wanted to trade down and get a haul to get, like Nabers plus a bunch in exchange for Harrison, I'm open to that. I think Nabers is a great prospect, but Harrison is also an awesome prospect. I think Harrison is also just like a little bit safer. He's just kind of a classic NFL X receiver. And,
that role is not as safe as it once was in fantasy.
It's not as safe as it once was, I suppose, but he's also not like a, slow 225-pound guy. He's fluid.
I don't know. He didn't test. I don't know how fast he is.
Well, he did pretty well in college. I think he's all right.
I don't know how fast he is. He didn't play against Mizzou. How am I supposed to know if he's good or not?
There were other games that he did play in, and he did well in those that indicate he's
every time
good.
they lost to Michigan, he played real well in those games.
He did play real well in those games, to be clear.
He did.
But when you look at like the kind of the top guys in Dynasty, at wide receiver, they're traditional wide receivers, basically Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase. I think that the play is that he is the next one of those guys. And he checks like basically every box to be kind of that elite, drafted consistently in the top half of first rounds in redraft leagues for the next 5 years type of dude. And I think Nabers can also be that, but it's like a little bit more of a projection in the sense that he was like playing more in the slot. He was, a little bit more dependent on some of the scheme stuff, which I know, Denny, you're into the scheme stuff, but it's like if the scheme stuff in the wrong hands starts to get bad, so it's just like, I think Nabers gives you basically all the ceiling that Marvin Harrison does, but just like it requires a little bit more of the situation to be right. With Harrison, with Kyler Murray, like he's going to get a bunch of targets. He'll be fine.
Will there be high quality though? So you have for best ball drafts, you have Marvin as the wide receiver 9. You have Malik Nabers as the wide receiver 17. I agree with. I think what your dynasty takeaway sounded like. As much as you love Nabers, you're not really bothering to like make it a debate. Like if you're at 1-2, you're just taking Marvin.
No, you just take her. And I feel the same way in best ball, where like you can sit in the early 3rd round and scoop up Malik Nabers, no problem. If you want Harrison, you got to take him in the early 2nd round. Fine. Like I'm not going to fight the market on that. Like our job isn't to like make the ADP, it's to make good teams. And that's where Harrison goes. I want Harrison, I will take him there. Malik Nabers, I've had absolutely no trouble getting a bunch of I just said Malik Harrison. Malik Nabers, I've had no trouble getting well overweight on him in the early 3rd, even the late 2nd, I think is fine. But yeah, I mean, that's just what the market is on these guys. And I do think that like Harrison's quarterback situation, while it's not perfect, it has a floor to it. I wonder if it's
even good. I do wonder if it's even good.
But like, Kirk Cousins was more than enough for Justin Jefferson. Like you don't need elite quarterback play when you're elite. You just need good enough. And Daniel Jones.
Falcons don't even think he's good. The Falcons already drafted his replacement.
Yeah, that's true. Well, there you go. So you don't even need good. You need worse than Michael Penix. You can be
as long as your quarterback's the Falcons QB2, you're getting to 1,400 yards. And I do think I agree. I don't think we're getting a Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase situation here. I think that's like pretty evident. But could we get Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, given that Hopkins went for like 1,400 yards, 115 catches a few years ago, admittedly? I would think so, given that Kyler Murray was the guy in that duo I named. And I think we could get it pretty quickly.
I wonder about Kyler is not improving. He seems to be getting worse. I know he's coming off the torn ACL last year. And he was a guy for a long time. I was excited about receivers to go play with him until they stopped doing anything.
I think that there are should be serious questions about his passing ability.
There's like downfield. He won't throw downfield. Marvin Harrison, elite downfield. I mean, Kyler doesn't do it.
His completion rate over expected was pretty poor, if I remember correctly, last season.
He was good last year.
He wasn't good last year. Yeah.
He's coming off of the knee. He's in a bad offense. So I guess maybe that should be weighed here, but I don't know. I feel like Daniel Jones is real bad, but Kyler Murray might just be bad. as a passer.
Yeah. So Daniel Raz pointed this out because I was getting thinking that Daniel Jones should be moved up quite a bit, given that he just kind of avoided the possibility of a new quarterback coming in. But he was noting that Jones has injury guarantees in his contract, somewhat similar to Russell Wilson. And so when you're thinking through the best ball stuff, it is in the back of my mind. It's certainly in the back of my mind for Jones, who I've now is this dude getting benched at the end of the year if they don't make the playoffs, which they won't. So
he might get benched at the beginning of the year.
Yeah. But I don't think that's great for Malik Nabers either. It depends how big. If you're Ian Hart, it's the possibility of Drew Lock captaining this team at the end of the year. You're drafting all the Nabers, but it is. I'm a little concerned about kind of what this team even looks like at the final weeks of the season. The little kind of tiebreaker sort of situation. But yeah, I hear what you're saying about Kyler. But this coaching staff seems okay. I feel like this is a decently run offense, second year off the ACL. And yeah, I mean, if you get mediocre quarterback play, that's probably
it should be good enough. Yeah. I did want to mention that as far as the schemed up looks and the short area targets for Malik Nabers, last year before his season-ending injury, Daniel Jones had 72% of his pass attempts were either behind the line of scrimmage or within 9 yards of the line of scrimmage. That's a ton. This man is not
all of them, in fact.
Yeah. As Denny and I have been talking about, we love the possibility that he's going to just maybe double up any other giant in targets. But the risk is the schemed up stuff is a lot easier to defend at the NFL level than it is in the college level. They see a bubble screen, oh hell yeah, I'm just gonna blow this guy up right now.
Yeah, that's true.
That was the big contention from your guys' camp with Bowers. And it's true that Bowers isn't going to get as many freebies at the NFL where he can just be better than every cornerback on the field quite easily on a 1 yard screen. Nabers, again, I think they're both good enough to succeed, but I do think you start to get into the territory as Kerrane mentioned of okay, well, how good are the schemed up touches? How good is the offense at executing these things? How obvious is it to see them coming? And that's why I'm so confident Harrison's you probably could scheme him up a lot of stuff because he's really good. He looks like a really good athlete when you watch him play, and his yak numbers improved last year as well. Not to extreme highs, but the dude can make cornerbacks miss, but he doesn't have to. And Nabers doesn't necessarily have to, but I do think that's possible that's what we see from him early in his career.
We will be right back after this. It's the most exciting 120 seconds in sports. Do not miss the 150th running of the Kentucky Derby at Churchill Downs. Coverage begins at 2:30 p.m. Eastern this Saturday, only on NBC and Peacock. So I've been struggling to say Churchill for some reason.
Oh, boy. Oh, it's in his head.
It's in my head. All right, Kerrane. I was told Kerrane has to skip a topic. Kerrane, who is the long-term Dynasty wide receiver 3 in this class? Is it Rome Odunze set and forget, or does Xavier Worthy push for wide receiver 3 status? Maybe Keon Coleman? I don't know. I'm just saying stuff. Brian Thomas. Who is the long-term Dynasty wide receiver 3 in this class?
I think it's still Rome Odunze, but the Xavier Worthy steam is real. You're also getting Ladd McConkey steam. But I think Odunze is still long-term probably the wide receiver 3. He's he's paired with Caleb Williams. That's going to be fun. It's maybe a little bit like CeeDee Lamb when he went to the Cowboys, where you got to look a couple years down the line to really see the massive upside, but it's definitely there. And it's not hard for people to imagine it. So I don't think you're going to get any discounts on Rome Odunze. In fact, he's going ahead of Bowers and stuff. So if anything, he's almost getting more expensive than he was pre-draft. But Worthy, I think, is interesting when comparing him to Brian Thomas and Ladd McConkey. I think those guys kind of form a tier after Odunze and McCarthy in Superflex Dynasty. And in best ball, I think they're going to be interesting to think through Thomas, Worthy, McConkey, how you kind of weigh them against each other. I expect that Worthy will be drafted the highest. He definitely has a really enticing ceiling, but I don't know. I still am kind of into Brian Thomas. I think this was a sneaky good landing spot. Christian Kirk could be gone after the year, and he kind of settles in potentially as Trevor Lawrence's number 1. I still think Brian Thomas is a better prospect than Worthy and McConkey. So I'm kind of standing strong there. But yeah, I think it's those top three, and then a real debate after that.
Well, then you have Worthy as the rookie. The best ball wide receiver 3 amongst the rookies this year. How confident are you in that? And what are the reasons why, even if he's not your dynasty wide receiver 3, you have him as your rookie wide receiver 3 for 2024?
Part of it is that I just know the market, and I just know these sickos and what they're going to do. And there's just no way that Patrick Mahomes, first round wide receiver they traded up for, fastest guy ever, doesn't get steamed. There's just a 0% chance. So if you want Worthy, you have to take him, and you have to be aggressive about it. And this is kind of the time. If you're drafting now, I would prioritize Xavier Worthy in a big way. I've been able to get him in the 70s. That's not going to happen like much longer at all, or even today, like you would struggle to get that done. So, but if you're getting him in the 60s, I think that's pretty great too, because eventually I think he ends up in the 50s. We have him at 53 in the leg up ranks right now, with the idea that, he could get higher than that. At a certain point, I don't want to be taking him in the 4th round, I don't think, but I could easily see him going there. So any discount on that eventual kind of overly steamy price, I think you grab.
Can I say that I'll admit this. Look, I do football analysis for a living. I forgot that Marquise Brown was on the Chiefs.
Easy to forget. He's never been good. So.
I mean, he is the most forgettable player. I think
like kind of pretty forgettable.
Never been good. Never
in the NFL. And also, so the addition of Marquise Brown, obviously them trading up to take Worthy, Rashee Rice missing maybe multiple games.
I do not buy the Rashee Rice 8-game suspension stuff.
Well, I don't know about 8, but I'm just saying he's going to face.
I swear to God, I was on blurb duty and saw that, and it felt so far fetched that I didn't feel comfortable putting it on the site. Like that's if it gets corroborated, sure, but I
don't like hearing stuff like that, Kyle. We want all the FUD in the Rashee Rice. We want him to keep falling. Baby.
Headline: It's over. Rashee Rice.
Rashee Rice to never play again.
Wow.
I do, but I feel like things are not looking up for our guy Rashee.
I don't know, 4-game suspension. I mean, they're going to hand Goodell the dossier on this thing. Like, what? He's driving fast? Like, whoa, it was a little more complicated than that, Commissioner. It's the Chiefs. We can't have the Chiefs wide receiver. I give him 3 or 4 games, whatever.
What did Kamara get? 3 games?
3.
Yeah,
that was like beating someone senseless.
Yeah, and that was 2.5 years after it happened.
Yeah, I didn't brag about it after, so.
So yeah, that was a saga. Now the Supreme Court is still ruling on that.
Right.
one.
I mean, Rashee Rice might not be suspended until like the 2035 season.
Yeah.
I haven't paid out any of my fantasy leagues as a commissioner, and I'm still waiting for the Supreme Court to decide on the Alvin Kamara thing. I refuse to accept those results.
Too soon.
They'll never do it.
But yeah, Xavier Worthy. I mean, the Chiefs. I guess it's weird. It's like, what do we think of young Chiefs receivers in the Pat Mahomes era? Because we've seen some face plants, and Rashee Rice was really kind of the first hit. We forgot about Mecole Hardman not hitting. I mean, we don't forget about that, but like everyone talks about Sky Moore. Like Mecole Hardman was Sky Moore before Sky Moore was Sky Moore, and like is Mahomes becoming like
Kadarius Toney too? I mean, we just did this with Kadarius Toney.
Is Mahomes becoming like a Rodgers type guy? Where like you gotta have chemistry with him, kid. I don't know what to say.
I think all the busts and hits so far have been pretty talent based. Like at this point, I'm pretty sure Kadarius Toney, in terms of like talent times his effort and understanding of football, is not good. Mecole Hardman, definitely not good.
Not good.
Sky Moore, probably not good. And when we finally saw someone who flashed, it took like 8 to 10 weeks for Rashee Rice to get up to a full-time role, albeit like we wanted it 4 weeks into the season. But it's not like we were sitting there at a 30% route rate in the Super Bowl. Like, why isn't he getting more time? They figured it took them half a season to figure out this guy was good, and then they gave him the role. So it wasn't like a Rodgers situation where we really are freaking out about the connection. It didn't take forever. I wish it would have taken 3 weeks.
I will say, I think it maybe was artificially bumped up. The Chiefs want to take it slow, but things were going so poorly that it was almost like they had no choice but to feature him. And
sure, talent differential between him and the next guys is not going to be the same as Worthy versus the guys on the roster now. I agree.
And they might have a choice with Xavier Worthy because the depth is better. But yeah, I don't know. Guy, very fast. And he doesn't have to be just a field stretcher deep guy. So it's pretty exciting landing spot.
I mean, maybe he could gain, a little weight this summer. That might be good.
Yeah, he is pretty light, and not like, from what I understand of kind of the tape eval too. The weight shows up.
I mean, he like all the tape bros are like, he ain't winning hand fights, he ain't beating press coverage. Like, that's fine. Like, you can have some players that don't do that on your roster, but it is evidence of the limitations of partially just his frame.
I'm not even sure he's a deep threat.
I know. That is the thing. I know. I mean,
which is not a problem for us. Like, we don't necessarily want that. It's kind of cool if he's like an intermediate target and also short area target. Let Marquise Brown run the Marquise Valdes-Scantling deep routes. Like, that's maybe
it's interesting because they do have two guys who, like, Marquise Brown has like top-notch, top-flight speed. Has never been like the 20 dot take the top off the defense guy. He runs some deep routes, but that's never been the totality of his work. He's more small. Of a close to the line of scrimmage guy. And Worthy was like a mixed bag of that in college. Early in his college career, he had a season with like a 17 dot, and then his final season, he was a much closer to the line of scrimmage kind of guy. So I think they have like a lot of versatility. Makes it a little hard for us to predict what they're going to do, but also I think it's really good for the offense. They have a lot of guys who can do a lot of different things.
He has experience as a deep threat, Xavier Worthy. Eric Proton broke this down for me.
Yeah.
Or they tried to make him a pure deep threat in 2022, the first year under Sark. And then he caught 9 of 44 deep targets.
Oh my goodness.
That was in the Big 12
the
too.
stat I was pulling up because that's the Proton. Proton told me about that too. That's insane. 9 of 44.
It's the Big 12 too, where like they don't even cover you. Like, they don't care. Like,
well, when Quinn Ewers is your quarterback, you're not covering that guy.
Yeah, Ewers is really, really bad. Like, I just want everyone to be just upfront about that. He's truly awful.
And
Ewers is really bad.
Arch Manning can't beat him out. Curious.
Yeah, what's going on there? I don't understand.
I think Arch Manning weighs like 160 pounds too.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, how does he run a 4.21?
They put him
That's
at
fine. He
receiver.
runs
That's
2.425.
Anyway, so Xavier Worthy, we will see what they do with Xavier Worthy. Pat, give me why are you Ladd McConkey hater? You have him behind Brian Thomas in your best ball rankings, even though he's going to lead the Chargers in targets. Even though, sure, he never really produced at Georgia because he was always kind of hurt, and like the stats don't really jump off the page. Blah blah blah. Elite.
He was outproduced by Brock Bowers. A total
no breakout
bomb.
season.
They're outproduced by a tight end. Yeah, whatever. No, why? Yeah, why do you, Ladd McConkey?
Yeah, what's going on with this?
You hating a little bit? What's going on here?
Yeah, generally, I prefer offenses where the defense doesn't know the plays ahead of time. Anytime the defense just calling out what you're going to do, not great. Especially when what they're calling out is another run.
I'll say this: that was without Jim Harbaugh. Greg Roman is not Greg Roman without Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh, he's a special. And even though it was run heavy in Michigan, I feel like it was a different run heavy offense, way different run heavy offense than the Greg Roman. I feel like it was a little more creative than the Greg Roman offense. And I think it needs to be viewed as the Harbaugh offense and not the Greg Roman offense, even though like there's not that big of a difference.
I was going to say, I think it's a more creative, run pass system.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Still,
it's
a more creative, very inefficient way to call plays does not inspire confidence in me.
So Pat does not look convinced.
I'm not, guys. He hired Greg Roman as his offensive coordinator. That's the biggest red flag in 2024.
Yeah,
that you can have for an offense.
Well,
I mean,
when
Jeff Fisher probably would have been
Edwards,
worse, I guess. But it's tough. It's tough.
Pat, when you've got J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards on the open market, you've got to pair them up with Greg. All right, that's just you're getting the team back together.
That's simple math.
So I do, McConkey, like I think he's a very interesting guy, and I think there's real ceiling here. Like, he can come in and immediately be the number one target earner in a Justin Herbert offense. I feel confident he can get open. I think he can play outside as well as inside. The route running is very exciting. So there's definitely upside. But I have some real concerns about the offense, how much volume there is. And is he the number one target earner, like with a 30% target share? Probably, let's say 26% target share. Or is he like got a 21% target share and it's kind of like spread out to, some Josh Palmer stuff and some Quentin Johnson stuff to throw into the running backs a little bit. Like, he's not like condensing a huge part of the offense, and the offense is not as exciting as we're used to with Justin Herbert. And then Brian Thomas, who I have one spot ahead, or 2 spots ahead in the rankings. That's partly driven by the market, which hasn't caught up yet on McConkey. If McConkey were to flip Thomas, I would follow suit and just go with that. But right now, like, Brian Thomas is set up to where he can he's this downfield wide receiver. He's basically fancy Gabe Davis, but he's set up to like just take over some of that Gabe Davis role from Gabe Davis.
So what if Gabe Davis but good?
Yeah, what if Gabe Davis but good?
Yeah.
And the Jaguars are going to be potentially like, I mean, we'll see, right? Because this whole defensive meta is like to take away the downfield passing game, but they've got Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas on the outside, Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram underneath.
It's a well-designed offense.
It's a well-designed offense and well-designed for the player under center. This is Trevor Lawrence attacks downfield. He's aggressive. You know, some of his downsides, some of his weaknesses are taking too many chances, making mistakes, throwing interceptions in the red zone, that type of stuff, which can be frustrating. But I think he'll put the ball up for Brian Thomas. He's got a big arm. Like he can unlock Brian Thomas as a downfield threat.
This could be an shaky offense. As a downfield passer, though. T-Law, at least by like the PFF type stuff.
Can you judge truly under Urban Meyer and then with Zay Jones and Calvin Ridley as your deep threats? Like this is the season.
Very,
that
very
shows
good
us.
point.
If he was very exciting as a downfield passer at Clemson, and so does that get unlocked? And I really like stacking. Like I did Christian Kirk, Brian Thomas, Evan Ingram, Trevor Lawrence. You can get that stack quite easily in best ball drafts right now.
But at what cost though, Pat?
I mean, not that much. I think it was fifth, 6th, 7th, and 10th or something. It's pretty cheap.
I feel like there's like a cottage industry. I'm not saying, Kerrane, you're doing this or you're part of this cottage industry, but I feel like there is a whole industry out there that says that creates excuses for Trevor Lawrence, and like it's like Calvin Ridley stepping out of bounds a few times last year on sideline throws, or like Urban Meyer 4 years ago being bad.
A little more recent than that.
2 years.
It was 2.
I will say I will still excuse.
It's 3 now because
I guess 3 now. Yeah.
I still lean like 1 full year of credit of complete write-off for the Urban Meyer season.
Yeah,
for Trevor Lawrence.
Sure.
Those stats should be wiped from history. Last year, Trevor Lawrence was top 5 in PFF's big time throw rate and PFF's passing grade on deep throws. Like, I think he's a good deep thrower.
I thought he did not grade out well in those last year. And my take that I keep going back to in this Jags offense is that from a talent perspective, I'm not entirely positive it got better swapping out Calvin Ridley for Gabe Davis and a rookie. But I just do think the offensive design is like way more coherent, where they have actual deep receivers who are going to be playing those roles and then creating hopefully a lot of space for Christian Kirk. And because Christian Kirk shouldn't be a deep receiver, and he kind of always has been. No team's ever been able to figure out he's Christian Kirk. But everyone's going to be deployed more sensibly this year.
And like one of the weaknesses of this offense is likely to be that they're not going to like move guys around and get super creative with roles, but like, fine. Gabe Davis should do the same thing like every route. So Brian Thomas should be doing similar stuff. Like, I think the defenses will struggle with like Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas are going to be challenging us deep in slightly different ways every route, and Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram are going to be more underneath. But that plays to all 4 players' strengths. They could be definitely pretty interesting. And look, I mean, Lawrence will, I think, rise up boards, but you're getting him outside the top 100 picks at quarterback, and a very stackable guy that can bring along multiple pieces in a week. We've seen him have the single week upside. I was pretty out on Trevor Lawrence when he was like a 6th round pick last year, but now it's like the cost has been cut in half or more.
That's a good point.
I'm back in.
Yeah, right. It's way more palatable to me this year than it was last summer when I was like, are we sure we're doing this?
Denny might be. Denny, unfortunately, might be right. He might not be good. He just might not be good.
He's not great. He's probably good, but he's definitely not great.
He's going next to like Jared Goff and Tua. Like it's none of these guys are great,
and that's fine.
Trevor Lawrence could too, though. I still think there's a chance we haven't even like come close to witnessing Trevor Lawrence's NFL ceiling. That might be an area where I disagree with you, Dave. He's been underwhelming through 3 years, but I wouldn't be surprised if just all of a sudden one year, like, wow, Trevor Lawrence is like about to throw for 5,000 yards.
Really?
Yeah, I'm dead
Really
serious.
strong
Yeah.
prospect, number 1 overall pick, a first year that
I'm
does not
serious.
count. Everyone can agree that. And then 2 good years. Like, they're not great. Like, absolutely, as Denny said, 2 years that are like, they're fine, they're good. He was probably a top 16 quarterback in the NFL, but like 2 years of being good when you are a really good prospect still keeps you in the ballpark, in striking range of being great. He hasn't achieved anything like that yet, but it'd be like crazy to write him off. Again, year 1 does not count. That's garbage. The stats have been wiped from the slate under Urban Meyer. If you just look at the other 2 years and his college resume, the arrow is still like pointing up in terms of his like lifetime value. It just hasn't hit a ceiling yet. And maybe it doesn't, but I don't think we can rule out a ceiling yet.
Did you know he's only 21 years old still, by the way?
That's crazy.
I just want to just raise this issue. Like, I remember looking into Lawrence's college metrics, and like per the numbers solely, it did nothing truly jumped off the page. If you look at like PFF graded him as the 12th best quarterback his final college season.
Yeah, what do they know?
Yeah, it's such a loaded team. Like the competition was kind of shaky. Like he wasn't in a situation. Like, even like Caleb Williams was in a situation where he had to throw 70 times a game. Trevor Lawrence was not in that situation.
I actually think that Trevor Lawrence is still getting by on his amazing freshman season, and it truly was amazing. But we're still latching on to that for dear life and saying, well, maybe that can come back.
I heard someone say only 2 good years for Trevor Lawrence. That's not a big deal for Justin Herbert. No one cares. He's only been good twice.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, if you're not buying the Jaguar stacking argument, I also think this is a good time to stack the Chargers. I don't want to be out on Ladd McConkey. Kind of, Brian Thomas versus Ladd McConkey was the way the question was posed, but like draft Ladd McConkey as well. If he gets up into the 5th round, then those points that I was making about Greg Roman and this offense, those become a lot more like top of mind at that point. But if you're getting him in the 7th round, which you can right now, I mean, his ADP is 83. He's moving up. We have him at 69 in the Legendary Upside ranks, but he's someone that I think you should be prioritizing right now as he moves up, and you can still get some of that discount. Herbert is very easy to get. He's falling. I actually stacked the Jaguars and the Chargers on the same team, and I took Lawrence first and then got Herbert to come back to me, no problem. People aren't really all that excited about stacking Herbert. You can get you can tack on a Josh Palmer if you want, but you can also tack on these running backs who are really cheap. And so I think maybe that changes. Maybe there's some steam. I know, Denny, you're trying to steam up Kaimani Vidal. I believe how you pronounce it.
Vidal.
Yeah, Vidal.
Yeah, I'm trying. We're trying hard.
We're trying, Kamani.
But I mean, if you can get like Ladd at a cost that he's below where he's going to eventually go, maybe Vidal at a price below where he's eventually going to go. I think that's a sharp stack to be making in these early drafts.
Yeah, and you're going to get the Chargers stacks for cheap, I think, for at least for a while, because I mean the consensus is that it's going to be a boring team. Lots of running, like very little effort.
I don't understand what's going on. The 49ers were never boring. They were never ever boring.
What about the 49ers?
So they were never boring when it was Harbaugh. They were never. They ran a lot, but it was like a dynamic offense.
But that was with a mobile quarterback.
Like, even with Alex Smith, it was a pretty dynamic offense. He's mobile
Pat,
too.
I think you're misremembering.
I don't think that's true.
With Alex Smith, it was a miserable slog of an offense.
No, it was a very effective offense. Very, very effective, folks.
I'm really questioning agreeing with you on that Derrick Henry take now.
I know. I might have to pull up some Pro Football references. By the way,
defending the Alex Smith 49ers is.
I'm just saying they got the number 1 seed with them.
I have to say. The Chargers, to me, as constructed under Jim Harbaugh, would have made a lot more. And I know they couldn't because the cap hit. I've been told this 100 times. If they ditched Herbert and got like a purely mobile quarterback, like if they like traded all the way up and got Jaden Daniels, like that would be very, very interesting and make a lot more sense to me.
Just real quick here. Yeah. Okay. I mean,
Alex Smith
He threw for 17 touchdowns. All right, whatever.
At most, he peaked with 3,144 yards in 16 starts.
I thought it was more like 24 touchdowns. I don't remember it being 17.
17 touchdowns.
Good God. Frank Gore, am I right?
I mean, it's probably the worst offense I've ever seen.
No, it was effective. They went 13-3.
No. They had a good defense.
They had an elite running game.
They had an almost intentionally bad offense.
No, they did not.
Michael Crabtree led the 49ers with 874 yards and 4 touchdowns.
That was it was a good offense. It was a very, very effective offense. It was a very, very
In what way?
They went 13-3.
Yeah.
Oh, am I right?
And the Chargers are going to be 12-4 this
Frank
year.
Gore rushed for like 1,500 yards. No, it was only 1,200.
That's not even that many.
Ladd McConkey is going to be like wide receiver 65 this year, and the Chargers are going to go 12-4.
By the way, I was thinking I've been wanting to say this for like 10 minutes. It's not going to hit the same now, but I thought of a Gabe Davis nickname for the Jaguars, Gabe VS. Or MVS. You get it? You get it?
I do get it. I don't know if that one's going to catch on.
I don't think it's going to catch on.
I
don't know if Kyle's going to catch on. We've lost him. He got the blue screen of death on his computer.
Oh.
Seems like a good time to take a short break. We'll be right back after this. This Sunday, Liverpool and Tottenham face off in a must-win match as time is running out on the Premier League season. Can the Reds keep pace atop the table? Can the Spurs make a late push into the top 4 in Champions League qualification? Find out at 11:30 a.m. Eastern exclusively on Peacock this Sunday. Yeah, Kyle, he was a good man. Lived his life like a candle in the wind. So we'll see. Denny is out in 10 minutes. We're going to see what happens. This show might go. We might have to go without you, Denny. After you.
Yeah, I am sorry. I have a prearranged dog pickup.
Yikes! Could have made up a better excuse than that.
You don't keep a Cotton Atelier waiting.
You remember.
Could have made up a better excuse than that. Kyle Dvorchak is back. I'm going to add him in. There he is. Oh, he said don't put him in. But he's here. I will take him out for a minute. Pat, is Jonathan Brooks still the Dynasty RB1 despite the absolutely brutal landing spot? Or is it a landing spot? I know in your best ball rankings, you have Trey Benson on the Cardinals as your rookie RB1 over Jonathan Brooks. Does this just not destroy, but severely complicate Jonathan Brooks' Dynasty League value?
I don't think it does. He just got drafted in the second round by a coach who's came up under Pete Carroll and then gave Rachaad White like all the touches and then talked about how he wants to run the ball a bunch and then drafted a running back in the second round. Seems like he's going to get a lot of work.
Miles Sanders is good though. Nope. Worst running back in the NFL.
The thing with like a running back in general, right, in this league is that you like don't want the offense to be too good. I guess Christian McCaffrey sort of proves this wrong a little bit, but like generally, right, maybe if it's the most efficient offense in the league, we like that. But most of the time, if it's like an okay offense that's just willing to run the ball too much, that's pretty cool. And maybe we get there. I think, can Bryce Young get us to an okay offense that's built around the run? It's at least possible. You know, he was so bad last year, but he was the number 1 pick. Everyone but Denny, who immediately identified him as just being too small to work, saw some of the upside. You know, there were reasons we were excited. We should have listened to Denny, but we didn't. And he's just too small. He is just too small. But maybe on some of those play action plays, you know, you can keep the offense, you can keep the chains moving. They're going to put like less on his plate this year, I think, and it'll probably be a better designed offense overall. So I think Jonathan Brooks, you know, you get the draft capital, you get a team that's excited to use you. He's versatile. He can catch passes. This team should throw to the running back as well. We certainly saw that with Canales last year, that they're willing to throw to the running back. And Brooks had a really versatile profile that indicates he could be a pretty good pass catcher. Kind of like a DeAndre Swift type, but maybe like a little bit more consistent would be kind of the upside case for Brooks. And yeah, I'm just kind of betting on the prospect profile, which I thought was pretty clearly the best in the class. I think Trey Benson maybe had a case, but he went 3rd round, and I think that matters. Benson in particular, like Benson was a college committee back, and I was curious to see if a team would sort of step up and say, no, this is our workhorse, draft him in the 2nd round. the fact that didn't happen makes me a little bit more nervous that he is just going to be kind of a committee back in the pros.
Well, set up to be a committee back as a rookie with James Conner, and you do have him ranked ahead. Best ball, is this part of the market? Do you have Trey Benson ranked one spot ahead of Jonathan Brooks in your best ball rankings?
I mean, you're not coming off a torn ACL, so for this year, probably slightly better bet.
That's sad, but also makes sense. And just really hope Bryce Young does not ruin the entire operation. I don't know why I asked about a running back, because we have to pivot back to receiver real quick. Is there a case to be made that we're all overthinking Keon Coleman and we should be more bullish? Some people are bullish on him, I guess. I guess he's already a very divisive player. He was the number 33 overall pick, who was personally stumped for by Josh Allen. Like, we can't decide if he's actually good or not, but the landing spot basically could not be better. The need, it's always very, very dangerous, like to say, like Doc Connectable, they have no choice but to target this rookie. But the Bills had no choice but to target Dalton Kincaid last year, and they did it. They really, I feel like, have no choice but to target Keon Coleman. What, like, cutting through the memes and the narratives, Pat, where really are you on Keon Coleman?
Yeah, I'm in a kind of an uncomfortable position on Coleman where I think I'm in, but I also am like convinced he's going to fail. So,
thought about not being in then.
I would say those players last year,
lot.
last year felt like Jonathan Mingo and Quentin Johnston, where as prospects, I was more than a little shaky on someone like Mingo, but they fell in spots where I either saw routes or I saw a good offense. And it turns out the talent is what mattered most by a country mile, and it wasn't there as rookies for either of them.
But this has also been the case with like Chase Claypool, who ultimately did fail, but it worked for a season.
It worked for a minute, yeah.
T. Higgins, I was not particularly into coming in, but I was like, this is a boom bust profile, and you don't fade boom bust profiles that actually have a boom element, which he did.
T. Higgins has both boomed and busted.
Yeah, he kind of did. He's boomed. I mean, this, especially from a dynasty perspective,
he's done both.
Yeah, but I think Coleman has a very volatile range of outcomes, and he's certainly propped up by being on the Bills, and not just with Josh Allen, but a ton of open targets. They are talking about playing him at X, like a traditional X wide receiver, which I think is a nightmare. Like, he's not going to be able to separate. He didn't separate in college. And so I'm worried about, like, this is a guy I would want to hear, like, oh, we're going to move him around formation. We're going to make sure, we're going to get the ball in his hands. Like, I was really enjoying your point about Xavier Leggett. You don't want to hear that out of the backfield right away. But, I think with Coleman, like, he's great after the catch.
Yeah.
He is like, he can body dudes up. Like, he can win contested catches, but a lack of separation consistently as a route runner in a traditional role that's not trying to move him around.
Yeah, they need to help him. They need to help him. Yeah. I was underwhelmed by a couple things with Coleman. One, his targets per route run in his final season was 22.5%. It's not, exactly mind blowing. And then his yards per route run was 1.8. Like, that's
dreadful. Very bad.
For a top 40 pick, you better be approaching 3.
That's pretty awful. I don't get it with Coleman. I guess if Josh Allen wants him to be,
try to get in. We're honestly probably not qualified to do this. Why did Josh Allen stump for Keon Coleman? Like, because the front office isn't going to ignore that. So, like, what are the reasons we think Josh Allen wanted Keon Coleman?
It looks cool when he plays. Without a doubt,
does look cool when he plays.
It's crazy to see this, like, 6'3", 215, I think maybe 213, like, former basketball player, literally got D1 minutes at Michigan State. Not a lot, but, like, did get onto the basketball court after a season of playing football. I can't, like, stress how insanely hard that is from a physical perspective. He returned punts at Florida State at that size is, like, an insane thing to do. But, like, then you dig into all this stuff, and, like, he was fine in terms of yards after the catch, but he wasn't like an elite yards after the catch guy. I think he was like a career 5-point-something guy. People are like, oh, Marv doesn't do yards after the catch. He beat Keon Coleman, and he was really bad on contested catches in his final year. He was much better the previous years. I think some of that's Jordan Travis getting in there and messing up the stats, but, like, it's hard for me to see through the numbers exactly how he wins. And now, as Pat pointed out, I think it was Brandon Bean who said they see him as the true X, but everyone who watched him said, the traits I see are beautiful and I love them. And I get that they don't show up on tape, right? They don't show up on the stats, they'll show up when you let him play big slot. That's how you emphasize what he does well. Even if what he does well doesn't show up in the yards per route run, the contested catch stuff, it'll show up as a big slot. And then the first thing we hear is he's not playing big slot, which from what they have sort of makes sense. They have Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir, guys who are almost exclusively slot guys.
Yeah.
But then, like, why do you draft him in the first place? If the thing that all the scouts see as his translation of his traits to actual production is not what you plan to do with him. So, like Pat said, I don't want to be the guy fading the rookie, almost first round, like 33rd pick with Josh Allen when his competition is Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir. I don't want to be fading that guy, but it's probably why I feel comfortable. Just let's fire on him in best ball. He could give us some spike weeks.
Yeah.
Josh Allen is great. But when I look at the 5-year arc of his career, which is like the dynasty perspective, I'm actually probably fine letting some other people beat me to the punch there.
But I mean, dynasty is a year-to-year game. You know, you if you're playing it, and I'm not as active as I used to be, but you should, if you're playing it well, you should be sending out a lot of trade offers because that's how you keep your roster liquid. And like, we are terrible at predicting things. Frankly, just 1 year out. We're horrendous.
Yeah, maybe you are, but whatever.
We're horrendous at predicting things 2, 3, 4 years from now. Like, we just can't do it.
Yep.
So that's where you look at like Keon Coleman and he flashes with Josh Allen, trade him. You know, you're kind of, I think you're hoping to get this guy in the second round of your rookie draft, which you will be able to, and then hope he gains value and flashes. And look, I mean, if he's a star, then you can trade him, or you can hold him. But I think more likely you draft him in the early second round of like a super flex draft. He flashes a bit, and you try to generate a profit with that.
I mean, sort of like his college profile, like he flashed a lot in college and it made him the 33rd overall pick. He doesn't need to be a targets per route runner, yards per route run phenom with Josh Allen as a rookie. He needs 220-yard games with a touchdown each, and his value goes up, even if all the advanced metrics say, he wasn't.
And maybe they use him like Chase Claypool, right? Like they use him on, throw him an end around, surprising. Oh, wow, he scored a touchdown.
Jahan Dotson's rookie season was very underwhelming from the advanced stats, but he scored like 6 or 7 touchdowns and his value went to the moon. And he was a prospect who I think all of us probably were not as high as his draft capital was. And that was the moment in which you knew to sell him. His value went up, but all of the metrics kind of confirmed our general dislike of him as a prospect. So Pat, you probably make a good point that like, unless things go truly south, it's a Quentin Johnston, Jonathan Mingo situation. It could, but like those are it could. Those are sort of the tail end. You don't need him to be a smash. He does some fun stuff as a rookie, and his value goes up.
And also, like, I didn't like Michael Pittman as prospect. I still don't think Pittman's that great. I just didn't think there was much to the prospect profile. Like, I didn't see it, and he's been better than that. So like sometimes I'm just at a certain price, and early second round, I think is probably where you want to start to have a little bit more of an open mind with some of the stuff. Like if you're going to get a chance to draft a guy who has an ultra clear path, we are installing him to be this path of Josh Allen's number 1 wide receiver. You should take some cracks. I don't think like being ideologically against Keon Coleman strikes me as a mistake. Because no one wants to be ideologically for him. So it's like the cost is quite palatable, like way more palatable. What if I told you guys like last year, Stephon Diggs is going to get traded and they're going to draft a rookie wide receiver with the 33rd pick, who's going to get installed as the number 1 outside wide receiver for this team. The competition is Khalil Shakir, an okay Dalton Kincaid. You'll be shocked to hear this. He was mediocre. And Curtis Samuel.
Yeah, well, you'll also be shocked to hear they let Gabe Davis walk in free agency.
and Gabe Davis is gone, which I've forgotten, which is also not surprising. Yeah. And we're all lukewarm on this guy.
Yeah. That's
both Pat and I just eating our vegetables. Like, we're gonna draft some Keon Coleman.
You should.
And it's not going to work. It's not going to be a Mingo situation, by the way. I don't think it can be a Mingo situation when you have Josh Allen.
Yeah, a part of Jonathan Mingo's failure was absolutely the offense. No doubt about that. I think Quentin Johnston's probably the better parallel because he, for the most of his season, obviously Herbert didn't close out the year, but even when Herbert was there, just couldn't make the field or whatever. That's probably a better comp because Mingo, although I don't think he's good, who was going to be in that offense. So
we have time for one more topic. Do you want to talk about Ricky Pearsall or Kimani Vidal? Who would you rather?
I think we could with Vidal. You should be mixing in late and drafted. I would say if he gets steamed up, don't like chase him beyond kind of the true late rounds because he's a 6th round pick and he might be on the practice squad or a game day inactive. But Pearsall, I think, is more interesting.
You know, him was the wide receiver 61 in best ball, which I was a little surprised by, but does make sense. Right now, he's the clear-cut wide receiver 3. I guess I don't really know if Debo or Ayuk will be traded at this point. I think they still
Probably
could be
not.
traded.
At this point, it seems pretty unlikely, but like you said, probably not impossible. But at this point, what better offer is coming? And that better offer has to factor in the fact that the picks are coming 10 months out now.
It's true, but I just don't know why teams always think like that's so bad. Like it could be very good to have the pick 10 months from now. But
yeah.
But I guess whoever's trading for him will, by definition, probably be a good team. So it's gonna be a low pick. But yeah, Ricky Pearsall. Final word of the show. Why quote only the wide receiver 61 as a 1st round receiver? You know, an elite offense, the best designed offense, probably in the NFL. A real position of need. It seems weird to say when you have Debo and Ayuk, but wide receiver 3 was a real position of need for the 49ers.
Well, you know, shots fired at Juwan Jennings, who just was awesome the last time we saw him.
Yeah, like a one drive away from Super Bowl MVP, Juwan Jennings, but sure.
That's true. He actually is not that bad. He's pretty good. Yeah.
No, I think they drafted him because they like Pearsall and they aren't going to have one of these receivers ahead of him at some point. It might be next season. But I think my thing with Pearsall is I'm trying to get exposure. At a certain point, it's tough to draft him because there's like a very, very plausible case, maybe the most likely scenario that he doesn't really play much this year. Which, you know, generally that's not great. But it's just so easy to imagine, like, you know, Kyle, if you think DFS mind, you know, and like, okay, think about Xavier Leggett versus Ricky Pearsall, and these guys are going very close to each other in best ball. What would it take for us as a community to be like 4,300 Ricky Pearsall? Everyone's playing him that week versus 4,300 Xavier Leggett. It's like so much easier to imagine how he's like just a lock button play at, you know, just above min price on DraftKings, right? Or he's 5,300 and he's an awesome play. Much harder for me to imagine Leggett being that guy than Pearsall. And I know like some chaos has to happen, contingency, you know, injury or trade, right? Or, you know, relationship breakdown, which has happened with some Shanahan receivers in the past.
There's a lot of injuries in that skill core too. I mean, George Kittle and Debo can both miss time pretty easily.
And 1 week, right? 1 week a guy misses. This is why I bring up the DraftKings salary. It's like week 14 only. He's cheap enough, right? He's going outside the top 12 rounds or top 11 rounds. So you're in a position where if he just hits in week 15 or 16 or 17 in these best ball tournaments, that's probably it. He paid off his price tag. Like that's enough. That's the way these tournaments work. Normally we don't talk about that kind of archetype of player being a target until the very last rounds. He's a premium 18th round pick basically, but he's a 1st round wide receiver who plays for Kyle Shanahan. And it's, you know, so you're kind of like hoping that he gets more opportunity at the end of the season and he produces some spike weeks for you. So it's a pretty weird, and I get like, I've talked to some people and they're like, yeah, I'm out. That doesn't do it for me at all, which I understand. Like an 18th round pick who you take in the 12th doesn't sound super awesome, but it does. But I think he can as long as what I would say with Pearsall is you have to structure your teams to where you're drafting this guy as like your wide receiver 5 or later. If you need a wide receiver 4 and you're taking Ricky Pearsall, you're in rough shape. So that's how I would think about him.
How do you feel about him in Dynasty? Really quick, we need to end the show, but
I think he's a layup in Dynasty, like a total layup. One of these guys is going to be gone next year. So what does that do to their 1st round pick from 2024? Like almost if he doesn't even see the field, like JSN. If Lockett had left, his price would have risen because it's like, well, he's going to get more opportunity. Like he has to bomb. You know, these guys can always ruin their value by just being terrible. But if he's not terrible, his price will increase next year. And he's going in the mid-second round of Superflex drafts. Take him.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you just did describe a layup. And it was a layup having you on today. I had to talk to you about the rookie dynasty and classes and best ball too. Because we're still just unpacking all this. I feel like a lot of these guys, we could have almost totally different narratives in 3 months. Some of it ADP based, because Kerrane is not the kind of person who's going to be changing his opinion on a player for like superficial. Like ADP will change like the narrative around some of these guys. But yeah, it's a really interesting rookie class. I mean, it is every year. But I feel like this year there's a lot of guys we can just like debate all year, all summer.
Yeah, I mean it's a really deep wide receiver class.
Yeah. What was it 6 first-round receivers? I believe so.
I think so.
Maybe more than that. 6 first-round receivers and a pass-catching tight end.
7, right? It was because Worthy, Thomas, Pearsall, Leggett.
Oh yeah,
and then the top 3 guys.
I keep forgetting Leggett snuck in there. Just couldn't wait till day 2 for him, huh?
Literally no. We had to trade him.
Yeah, quite literally not. Very good point. Extremely on point to have Pat Kerrane on. Pat, thank you so much. Tell the people about where they can find you, what you have recently posted, what you might be working on.
Yeah, legendaryupside.com. I've got the best ball ranks. I was referring to the underdog ranks, just kind of for shorthand there, but we do also have DraftKings best ball ranks that just launched today. And we've got a bunch of really good content, best ball dynasty related. Dynasty rankings, full dynasty rankings, superflex rankings, rookie rankings that cover superflex and 1 quarterback. I'm working on an article that is about a South American log that was found in the rainforest. And it relates to best ball. It's a best ball. Right. It's a best ball metaphor. I think you'll enjoy it. That I'm hoping to get that out Monday. I'll probably make that one completely free. Anytime you're going that far down the metaphor rabbit hole, you have to just make the article free. So anyone can check that one out. Sign up for the newsletter for free. You'll get that one. But we also have right now a deal going where if you sign up for Legendary Upside yearly subscription, which is $99, you get a $50 underdog credit if you fill out a form on the site, or you can always email me at legendaryupside@gmail.com if you have any questions about how to get that underdog credit. But yeah, we're going to be doing a bunch of best ball content all summer.
Awesome stuff. A must subscribe. By the way, check out Kyle's rookie dynasty rankings live on rotoworld.com. Like kind of interesting points and counterpoints to each other. 2 really smart minds on the dynasty lay of the land. So
they're probably not that much different, for being honest.
But Pat, thank you so much for taking the time. Good luck to your new family. And we'll talk to you later.
Later.